So what are the best decks for the new season if you want to grind out a ton of games before the mini set drops? I'm going to tell you right now, and I'm going to be honest, I don't like including a lot of the same classes on this tier list, but I'm going to be putting at least 2 Paladin decks on this tier list, but I don't think I'll go more than 2. First, we have Manageri Paladin or N'Zoth Paladin, whatever you want to call it, and this deck is the strongest deck in the game right now according to Hearthstone Replay. It's a little bit better than Secret Libram Paladin, but I personally like Secret Libram Paladin more because this deck feels a little bit clunky in the top end. Like, you have a ton of top end tools, but it just feels like your early game suffers a little bit to get there, whereas Secret Libram Paladin feels good at all stages of the game, at least to me personally. But overall, what you want to do is you want to curve out, play tempo, try to play one of your 6 drops, then drop a Carousel Griffin as a 5-mana 8/8 Divine Shield Taunt mech that'll get resummoned off of N'Zoth, and you win. And worst case scenario, you play it as a 5/5 Divine Shield mech, just to put tempo on the board. Again, it'll be revived by N'Zoth. So honestly, very few weak points to this deck, and let's move on. The other insanely powerful Paladin deck is Secret Libram Paladin. Honestly, this deck has very few, if any, weaknesses. Not only does it have decent board wipe, because you have Libram of Justice, but you also throw in a Blade Master Samuro, but you also have really good healing and damage with the Libram of Judgment and the Libram of Hope, so aggro decks will almost never kill you. Obviously, your early game is still really good, and you have an extra 1-drop in the Elder Attendant, which is something that the N'Zoth Paladin doesn't really have. Obviously, they have the Broomstick, but that's not really like a 1-drop. It's more of a card you want to use to combo with other stuff later on. But yeah, this deck just has slightly better tempo, some better tools. And once you get to the mid and late game, you have Lady Liadrin to give you like infinite value late game with your Librams. And I will say that the late game of this deck does feel a little bit weaker to me, so N'Zoth does have the edge on that front, but early and mid game, I think that this deck has the edge. Next, we have Face Hunter. Face Hunter is my most frequently played deck, and it's the deck I love playing when I'm trying to climb, because it's pretty simple, it's cheap, and if I just want to grind and not really think too much, and like, let's just say it's the beginning of the new season, for example, this is a great deck to just crank out games with. I feel like I've played this deck a lot. I'm 41-22 with it. That's a 66% win rate over 60 games, which is kind of absurd, and I will admit there were some losses recently, but all of the losses are usually really, really close, where like you just barely don't have enough damage, but maybe if you played better, there would have been like a dub in there somewhere. I don't know. I've tweaked the deck around a little bit. I no longer run Piercing Shot because it just feels bad to me most of the time. It just feels like garbage. Yes, it can do some good direct damage, but it's just a strictly worse Fireball a lot of the time. Because you mainly want to use it for damage. You're almost never using it to actually remove the minion. And I was like, a Crescent's probably better because it has more early game tempo, can help keep Paladins in check early, and if played correctly, can combo with the Trampling Rhino really well, and essentially do the same amount of damage as the Piercing Shot would have done anyway. So yeah, that's basically it for this deck. Let's move on. Token Druid's big thing is just that it's not very fun to play. But if you look at the win rates, this deck is absolutely absurd. I know that we've all played against at least some Token Druid that sets up a board and has lethal by turn 5. It's happened to all of us. This is an absurdly powerful deck if played correctly, if you can get a good hand. And even if you don't get a good hand, you have some pretty good draw. And as soon as you get to Glowfly Swarm or a good Gibberling, and then maybe make your board tanky with the Soul of the Force or something, you'll probably win. I will admit, into aggro decks, you want to pump out minions quickly. Into a deck like Priest, you want to pump them up in the mid game and play, you know, Glowfly Swarm along with Pride's Fury or Soul of the Forest at some point to make your board sticky, because that way the Priest or Warrior can't wipe your board twice, and that's the main way to win games with this deck. It's basically matchup dependent. Aggro, fast, fast, fast. Slower decks, slow, get something to make your board super big and impossible to kill, and then go with that. So Miracle Rogue, you can basically run this as Miracle or Secret. They're basically the same deck, except obviously one of them has secrets, and the main changes you would make is like Foxy Fraud out, Guardian Og Merchant out, Broomstick out, and maybe 1 or 2 other cards, and then you throw in Hanar and like 4 secrets, and that's basically the difference, but they run very, very similarly, and so I'm basically including them both in this slot on the tier list. It's a pretty high skill cap deck, but you have really good tempo, you have a really good draw. Alex Strazza's some good burst late game, especially if you get the combo with Tenwu or Shadow Step to potentially do it twice or maybe even 3 times in any individual turn. So yeah, I would highly, highly, highly recommend trying this deck out if you haven't already. It's fun, though. It is, in my opinion, one of the most fun decks on the list because it really rewards good play. So yeah, I would recommend trying this deck out. The last deck on this list, and I just want to say right now that there are other decks that are good. These are just the ones that I personally endorse. But the last deck on this list is Rush Warrior. And I think Rush Warrior is just a really, really powerful deck. You just can get your minions to be so big, surprise people with so much tempo. You have rush minions so you can deal with things like Hunter and Paladin. You have good late game with Troublemaker, Alex Strazza, and Karen Bloodhoof to contest some of the later game decks. And overall, it's just really strong. I would highly recommend trying it out. There are also some other decks I'm just going to throw out there at the end here that are viable. You have Ramp Paladin. You have Death Rattle Demon Hunter. Along with, you know, no Minion Mage is solid, although can be kind of counterplayed a little bit. And, yeah, that's basically it. Also, obviously, like, Aggro Paladin and Secret Paladin are also good. But, yeah, overall, that's about it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed. This is going to be a short one, obviously. But I just want to make sure that you guys get the best decks possible for a quick climb right at the beginning of the season before the mini expansion drops, when hopefully the entire meta gets thrown for a loop and everything changes. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.